I think that just as we're living in a nuclear age, we have grown so tremendously in scientific knowledge. It doesn't seem too much to say that men can begin to awaken to the fact that they haven't grown enough spiritually and haven't recognized their spiritual capacities.
Once something like eating is death, then you've struck at the very heart of life. The enemy of the older radical theories may have been the ruling class, but today the stakes of whether we will reform ourselves into a new kind of human being, a new kind of society, whether we will find selves worth being, the stakes of it are simply life.
This is a segment of Dustbowl Diatribes, Season 4, Episode 4, a conversation that Spencer and I have about our respective trips, which we took partly to visit Catholic worker houses and, in my case, to do research. And this segment is basically me discussing my research. To get to the full episode, you just want to subscribe or go to Dustbowl Diatribes on pretty much any podcast platform, or go to the Maurin Academy's YouTube channel. And Dustbowl Diatribes and the Political Philosophy podcast here are both podcasts of the Maurin Academy. No comment. So the plan for this one is we all made trips that included visits to Catholic worker houses of hospitality and other things in this past few months. And so, we wanted to talk about it and kind of compare our experiences. So I can just briefly say where I went, and then maybe you can say where you went, and then we can maybe figure out how we want to talk about this. But I went to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I went there mainly to do research at Marquette University. And that was earlier this month. I think it was like October 9th, 10th, and 11th. So that's where I went. Where did you go?
We helped our friend Caleb move to Boston, and in the process, we stopped in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, where our friends James and Renee run Martin DePore's house. James is who we interviewed a few episodes ago. And then on the way back, we visited Sean Dominsic, who used to run Holy Family Catholic Worker and the Tradiste podcast. We visited him. We visited Deacon Chris.
Mm-hmm.
So stayed at 2 worker houses, and hung out for a while.
And where's Sean at now? Was he in the same zone as Chris?
He's in Lancaster.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They would jump on me and say I mispronounced that somehow, but I don't know how to pronounce it correctly. But
I have no idea. Lancaster would be how I would pronounce it. Did he pronounce it different?
I guess somebody corrected me with some nuance. Anyway, it's fine.
Probably Chris. Yeah, I would say, people on the East Coast say things in a funny way. So we're the norm. We're the Midwest is the norm.
Really? Yeah.
That's what I say anyway. Well, I feel like my trip is a lot shorter than yours. Maybe I can just say a few things about it first, and then we can get into yours. And then compare notes, I guess. Since I went to do research at Marquette, that was my primary focus, and I did that on that Friday. So I had one day period from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., I want to say, or maybe it was 9, to look at the Peter Maurin boxes at the archives there. And so I flew in the night before, and there's a lot of happenstances here, but I have relatives, kind of distant relatives, who live in the area that I'd never met before. And my dad passed on word to them that I was going to show up and do this. And then things really took off with, um, plans to visit them, but also they knew people who were Catholic workers in the area. They got a hold of them. They asked them if I would like to, meet with them. One of them, and who was kind of like a bridge person, who was at the place where my relatives stay, which is like a retirement facility, sort of acted as a bridge between me and Catholic workers that she knew. And there's two Catholic worker houses there. The Casa Maria House, which is what Lincoln Rice is associated with, and then St. Paquita's, which I believe is, I didn't visit there, but I think that they primarily serve women and children there. But Casa Maria is more of a full, like I got driven by it, and it's several houses on a block, but there's one house that's Casa Maria. Um, yeah.
And
So
they're mainly doing like housing people that need it.
I think so, yeah. Housing people that need it. And yeah, there's the one house, then there's like a house next door to it, which I think does more of the same. And then I know across the street, the people who used to run Casa Maria live over there, and they still contribute to the mission. So they're right in the neighborhood still. Basically, that one person like gave me a driving tour. I didn't really want to do other, like I didn't actually want to impose myself on these two Catholic worker houses and kind of poke around inside and disrupt their agenda. So the next best thing was she just drove me around, so I got to see them. And she also showed me some community gardens in Milwaukee, which were pretty cool. So, but and then another thing that I did was a round table with Lincoln Rice. And I can talk about all of that if you want me to.
Sure.
Yeah. Um, okay, maybe I'll discuss the research a little bit first. So I had that amount of time, and I took 568 pictures because I knew, I had this one day. And so really, what was that?
Inside of the archives, you were taking photos of the document.
Yeah. Yeah, they allow you that, right? So I had a piece of equipment that was hooked up to my laptop where you could just put the next thing under there, click, and keep going. And so all I did really was take pictures that day, like superficially examine documents to see if they were relevant at all and take a picture. And I had to do that sequentially. So I made sure that I got the box and the folder that they were from photographed before I took the photographs inside in case I use them. So that was a very kind of like physically demanding day, as you might imagine, because you're standing or sitting for an entire day with about a half an hour break, doing nothing but shuffling documents across the platen, so to speak. And so by the end of the day, I was pretty bushed. But I did find there were a lot of interesting things that I took pictures of. But there was one document in particular that was over 200 pages long, written in Maurin's handwriting, that was more or less what Deacon Chris tells me is a commonplace book of quotes and paraphrases from 3 to 5 authors that Peter Maurin took a lot of information from. And he had arranged the book in terms of cult, culture, and cultivation. And each piece was formatted much like he formatted his easy essays, with the hanging indent and then the rest of it, on the side. And it looked like to me like it was intended to be a book, but it might have just been his way of organizing his thoughts. But I was kind of surprised that I hadn't encountered any reference to this thing. And I guess I would like to check back with the archivist and see when that was donated and where exactly it came from. But I got a photo of every single page, and I'm in the process of, um, I have to, more or less like crop and edit those photos for the best readability and scannability. So, anyway, I think I got quite a bit. My mission was kind of to understand Maurin as a human being and to figure out more about, like, yeah, who he was as a human being, because we don't usually do that. We just talk about his easy essays and his triad and, his framework and how he inspired Dorothy Day. But also, he was a human being who had like relatives. I got to see the few letters that came from or to his relatives. I got to see like a family lineage chart of his, parents and his siblings. And, so there's all kinds of stuff there to be had that could help a person flesh out a sort of a biography of Peter Maurin, which we do have biographies, but they don't really include, they tend to lionize Peter Maurin a bit. The one exception to this, to a certain extent, is the first one by Sheehan that does not do as much of that, but still does. And so when that sort of interferes, you don't get necessarily the full picture of a human being, but everybody kind of deserves that, I think. And so anyway, I took away from that, what I needed. And then the next day, I got that tour that I already told you about, spent time with my relatives. And then I did the roundtable with Lincoln Rice, in which like only, I want to say, how many people were there? I mean, with me and Lincoln and the lady who brought me, I think there was maybe 3 to 4 other people there. There was one scholar there who saw it announced, and she's doing a dissertation on comparing the Catholic worker movement and the Salvation Army. And so we conversed with her a lot, and Lincoln was great. And I think it was good for us to meet and get together and talk. And basically I gave my talk kind of on the basis of what I had been thinking about as I was taking all those photographs, and just the story of Peter Maurin's life that I'm starting to stitch together. And it was a story of dislocation. So I can talk more about that later on if you want. But part of my research in my previous books, especially the last one, has to do with the effects of dislocation due to automation and economic modernization and political modernization, and the psychological harm that can be caused by dislocation. And when I took a really good hard look at Maurin's life, both through the biographies that I've seen as well as the documents, to the extent that I could scan them, it's definitely a story of dislocation, among other things. And so I talked about that, and it seemed to go over well, but then there was very few people there. So, yeah. So it was
Did
like,
things go over well with Lincoln?
yeah, he said he liked it. He actually positively said that he liked it, the way it was framed. There's a phrase that political scientists use when they go to conferences. They say, "This is the story I'm trying to tell," right? They like admit that they're trying to build a narrative and they're trying to tell a story based upon the evidence that they have, but still one that you can like take away and remember from that presentation. And so that's the approach that I took, as I tried to frame it as a narrative, as a person's story. And I think he did like it. And he talked about, just like Maurin's biography, he took the role of, because he's the editor and author of the details, the other details of The Forgotten Radical, which is just the easy essays. It's an annotated easy essays. And so, he took the role of just kind of introducing who Peter Maurin was and kind of discussing his life. So anybody who was there would have gotten kind of like his chronological commentary about Peter Maurin's life and what he did. And then my sort of story about what that life, sort of like how that life was experienced, and maybe the impact of that experience on what Maurin did by founding the Catholic worker movement, as in kind of like a motivation for why he did that. I think it's pretty easy to see, once you look at it a certain way, why he would be motivated to do that. So anyway, that I think that went over okay. And
Which is to make sure that I'm tracking your argument is he experienced all these dislocations. So the Catholic worker synthesis was his attempt to intellectually come to terms with what a rerouting would be, and then also like solve the multi-level crisis of modernity.
yeah, I would agree with all that. Plus, also beyond that, his writings were a lot about, why do people leave things, and why do people abandon the farm, and why do they leave their traditional way of life? And those questions are more meaningful when you realize that he went through all that himself personally. He left his farm, he left his country, he left another community, he left, people that he had previously had arrangements with multiple times. And probably that all got started way back with a very early dislocation that's related to the fact that his little town in southern France was heavily impacted by the global economy and the changes that were being wrought, that were making it harder for farmers to even get by back in the late 19th century, because of the colonial global agricultural market, which is noted by him and his biographer, the early biographer, as an actual reason. And so, yeah, all of that. And I think it makes his teaching, it's more meaningful to me knowing that it came from somebody who was actually trying to, in a way, if Peter Maurin could like fix himself to a certain extent, is what I suspect, then he would have come up with a formula that could help fix other people and fix our situation. And that's what he was very much trying to do. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yes, I agree.
Well, I haven't written it out, but I plan on trying as soon as I can catch a breath, like maybe over break, do an initial draft of it, and then just keep doing research to see if the documents continue to kind of point me in that direction.